You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
It's a break for the NHL, but not really. It's the Four Nations Face-Off. And here to discuss it with us is Ken Daneyko. Ken, is this thing going to work? Are we doing the right thing? Does anyone care?
Wow, that's a great question, but there seems to be a lot of build-up and excitement when anytime you get best on best, and the players seem to be excited, generally seem to be excited. So, I'm certainly going to tune in tonight for the opening game, but I guess it's wait and see here. But what I always get intrigued by here is, superstar players playing with each other. There's only one puck, and how they adapt, how they adjust. So that certainly intrigues me. It's going to be a lot of fun. And anytime you put on your country sweater, I think there's a little more juice that's added, and you realize, it's not just a game. It's not just an exhibition game. We're playing for a lot of pride here in our country, and we'll see what happens. I love everybody talking about, well, this team's got the best lineup. Yeah, Canada looks stacked. Certainly the U.S. has the best goaltending, in my opinion, in many teams' opinion. But in a short tournament, there's always upsets.
You know what? I got to be honest. I saw a picture from the Team Canada practice of McKinnon, McDavid, and Crosby, and that might get put on a stamp later down the road in this country, because that picture right there got a lot more eyeballs tuned in for Canada's games.
Well, isn't there about 3,000 points those guys have accumulated throughout their career amongst them? So that's pretty impressive in itself. Yeah, and that's kind of the star power I'm talking about, that fans get excited to watch and see how they all jive together, and the importance for them if they have that intensity right out of the gate here to put on a show. And that's the pride thing. Best players, never mind playing for your country, which is so important. I was fortunate enough to play in a few world championships for Canada, and I took a lot of pride in it. I was honored to be selected at the time, way back in my day. But these guys, the best players in the world, they want to put on a show, I believe, so it should be a lot of fun. And yeah, that trio is pretty deadly, and I saw the picture you're talking about.
You know what's going to happen, though, Ken? The Russians who aren't in this, they're going to sit, watch, and then when it's over, they say, even though we would have won, right? If we were in it, we would have won. You know this, right?
Well, hopefully, we're talking about this as a precursor to the Olympics, right? And where everybody gets fired up for, and maybe Russia will be part of that. But yeah, the Russians, probably have something to say about it. There's so many great Russian players in the National Hockey League as well. So we don't get to see them this time around, but we will see them in the future, I'm sure. They always make it a little more interesting with all the skill level and talent that they have in the National Hockey League, their country.
So the rest of the guys get a break. They get a nice little chance to charge the batteries. Did you hear any trip plans? Did you hear any guys booking something where you're like, I don't know if you should be doing that?
Well, listen, covering the Devils like I do, the break couldn't have come at a better time. A lot of guys need to get healed. I know a lot of teams are banged up this time of year. It's a grind, no question. The 82-game schedule is a grind. So in particular for the Devils to get Heischer and Markstrom back hopefully shortly after the break. And yeah, talking to some of the guys in the plane, they're going to the Caribbean. They're going somewhere hot for sure, just to kind of unwind. But these guys, and I mean it, compared to my day, we'd have to come back and get in shape again because of all the partying we'd probably do. These guys are so cognizant of everything, and I'm sure most of these guys will be working out in the morning before they enjoy the sun or a margarita on the beach, whatever they like to have along the way. But these guys take care of themselves, no question about it. And I think it's a break. It's going to be interesting, the chemistry and cohesiveness of which team can get it together quickly right after a couple of week break here. But certainly a lot of teams need that much or need that rest from the injury standpoint. And the Devils no different, the team that I'm so close to.
So they get the benefit of having a bit of a longer break. When you played, you would have had the All-Star break was just a few games. When you look back, was there a trip or something you did when you played and you're like, I can't believe we got away with that?
Yeah, my memory is so shot. I mean, I have an excuse. I've been hitting the head one too many times. There's some things I want to remember, maybe some things along the way that I don't. But I do know, I believe, I went close. I went to Puerto Rico, I think, one year when we had a few days off for a 3 or 4 day break and get some sun and just unwind. I can't tell you the stories that transpired back then, but we were able to have a little more fun because there's no social media and no camera or phone pics and whatever it may be. These guys got to watch everything nowadays. They're scrutinized to the nth degree, understandably so. A lot of these guys are a corporation in their own now, so everything is watched extremely close. And but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, we had a little more fun back in my day. I mean, we were able to.
Yeah, and that you mentioned social media. That has turned the modern player. They're kind of, when they aren't at the rink, they're kind of hermits.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said along the way, I mean, I don't know how I would have dealt with, game to game, I'm great, I stink, if you're really paying attention to the fan base, everybody's so passionate and emotional, but it goes game to game where you're a great player, you're a great team, he's terrible, trade him, or the team stinks, and whatever it may be. We're all sensitive, I mean, along the way, and that for me would be tough to deal with at times, I think. I mean, I think I'm a little older and kinder and gentler, but I probably would have been asking to meet some fans and challenge them every once in a while.
Yeah.
In my day, just getting emotional of, the ups and downs of a season or whatever it may be. But yeah, they have to watch, and I hear some guys turn it off, but that's hard to do. I know everybody likes to, take a peek on their phone at Instagram or X or whatever it may be and hear what everybody's thinking. I think it's great from the standpoint, the engagement with fans, and it grows the fan base and interacting. Certainly as a broadcaster and a color analyst for the Devils and doing NHL Network, I like to engage with fans. The fans are what it's all about. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it would have been tough if they were ripping me once in a while. And I'm sure they would have been.
I shot a video on Instagram and I had my hat on backwards. It was to keep my hair out of my face. And one of the comments was, "You're almost 50. Why are you wearing your hat like that?" And that stuck with me.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what would I do wrong? So, yeah, it's the social media age, and you know who has mastered it? Sidney Crosby. He never has social media. You don't know a single thing about Sidney Crosby's life outside of the rink. Whoever his team is, they should win an award.
Dan, it's really amazing, isn't it? And that's just the way Sidney Crosby has carried himself right from a young age. I mean, he's mature beyond his years. He's what you call a pro's pro. And he doesn't let any of the outside noise affect him because he avoids it, whatever it may be. And you're right. He probably got a team that gave him some great sound advice right from the get-go. And he focuses on hockey. I mean, he's all hockey, as we know. And to be a star, a legend like he has become in the National Hockey League, you need to focus on the things that are important, that you play on the ice, and he certainly has done that as good as anybody right along the way. It is pretty amazing to watch how he carries himself. Nothing but the utmost respect for a guy like Sidney Crosby over the years.
It's still great head of hair. Hey, let's get to the Devils.
Yeah, I don't have that anymore.
I love the reveal. We needed the reveal. Let's get to the Devils and Sheldon Keefe. Give us your take on how he's been behind the bench there, how things are working under his leadership, the former Leafs coach.
So far, pretty good. I mean, I've really liked what Sheldon Keefe has brought. And for me, and having been, part of championship teams and grateful enough to be understanding what it takes to win and what type of players you need and how a coach blends everything together and gets the most out of a team and each individual. You got to have accountability. And I think he brings a little more accountability to this Devils team. Everybody's talked about they've got all this young talent, and they certainly do along the way, but they didn't make the playoffs last year, and all of a sudden you start so well, the first 30 games or so, and the fans and the hockey world in general and media expects the world of them, and then you go through some adversity, and that's when you can really see the true, heart of your team and players. And I think Sheldon Keefe still getting to know which guys, when battling through adversity, I have to lean on along the way. And I think he's done a really good job of that. I just like his presence. I like a coach that has presence behind the bench in practice. Just observing from afar and being around them all the time and traveling with them, he's got that little fear factor, respect that you need from a bench boss, in my opinion. So far, so good. Yeah, they've gone through ups and downs their last 20 games, as you like to say. They've battled through some adversity here, and that's why I said they needed the rest for sure, but we will see moving forward. They've taken great strides from last year. You can't win a Stanley Cup. The first 30 games, everybody wants, now they're playing so well, they're a Stanley Cup contender. Let's take one step at a time. I think Sheldon Keefe has kept things in perspective that, how about let's just get to the playoffs and be a sustainable playoff team. We'll worry about the playoffs then. And that's kind of the mindset I think he has, and I appreciate that and respect that because, like I said, I've been fortunate enough to see what it takes year in, year out. And it doesn't always go your way, and it's the teams that can battle through those ups and downs. And every team has gone through adversity, except probably the Washington Capitals and somewhat the Winnipeg Jets had a little hiccup for maybe a week or two, and that's it. So those have been the two top teams. After that, everybody's wins 5, loses 5. The competitive balance, Dan, in this league right now is at an all-time high, in my opinion. And so it's getting on a run at the right time and just trying to find yourself at the end of the year in a playoff position, because we know things change dramatically in the second season. It's the slate's wiped clean, and you believe you have an opportunity. I think a lot of fan bases and teams should believe they have an opportunity if they just get in the playoffs, and that's not easy.
Well, that's what Leafs fans think. You see the Leafs every single year. Anything about this team make it stand out? Is it the same old Leafs team? Do they have something different? Your take on this year's Buds?
Well, I really like Craig Berube. I mean, not to mention, I know the competitor he is. I fought him about 5 or 6 times in my career, and that was never fun. But he, he's won a Stanley Cup. He knows what it takes as the bench boss of the St. Louis Blues a few years back. So there's a guy that earns that respect as well. I always talk about that presence. I just think that's so important for a coach to really have that command of his room, command of his players, and making sure they're playing the game the right way. And that's the buildup you're seeing from him and a lot of the good coaches where, we're going to go through a 3-game losing streak, a 4-game losing streak. Maybe we're not scoring enough, even though we've got a lot of offense. But I want you playing a certain style and build up toward what you need to do in the playoffs. And that's, you got to be able to defend. You've got to create a lot of your offense, in my opinion, off of counterattacks and defending well. And I think that's what he has the least focus on. And they're going to be as dangerous as anybody. I know they've been saying it for years, and they haven't had success in the playoffs. Even under Sheldon Keefe and covering the NHL Network and watching closely last year, they played their you-know-what off. They played their ass off. I watched the Leafs. I mean, they were unfortunate again. They didn't get a timely goal, whatever it may be, but they've got as good a chance as anybody. It is not easy to win in this league, and I know they've been waiting for years in Toronto with some of the talent and the Matthews and the Marners and Tavares and them. But I believe Craig Berube is probably the right guy for them to maybe win a round or two and then maybe believe that you have a chance to win it all. But a lot of teams think that, no question. Like I said, because of the balance. But I watched them last year. I look at, are you just, is the work ethic not there? Is the commitment to defense and what you have to do in the playoffs to win not there? And I watched them last year. They couldn't have played any harder, yet they lost a tough series, and sometimes that's the way it goes.
You mentioned the fear factor that Sheldon Keefe has. Craig Berube dialed that up about 10 notches because he has those eyes. If he looked at me and I'm sitting on the bench, I'm shitting my pants.
Yeah, as a player, I told you I had to do the same once in a while when I saw those eyes, and we had some battles because the fact that his teams, the Flyers and Capitals, when he was on them, were rivalries in our division at the time. So as a player, but you like that. And when I say fear factor, it's more you can't have a bully coach all the time. You can't have a guy that, just yells all the time.
It's like a stern dad. Like, oh, crap, I better do it because dad just gave me the look.
He balances that out, I believe, as far as you want to the old saying, you want to run through a brick wall for a coach like that. I'll use, for example, Jacques Lemieux. I mean, when we won the Cup in '95 and I had him as a coach, and he was just honored in our Ring of Honor recently for the Devils. But, he had that presence, not only because of he didn't have enough fingers or toes for all the Stanley Cup rings that he has, so that instantly gives you credibility. But he had that look, that feel, that don't let me down. You know what I mean? And as a player, I think you like that. Maybe he's not as intimidating as a Berube type guy because of, the player he was and just that X factor of his mentality. But the great coaches have it. Lemieux had it too. I mean, he would just look at you, didn't have to say much, and go, Kenny. And I knew what he was saying without him speaking. That was a horrible play, a horrible pass. Make sure it doesn't happen again. I could read between the lines at times with certain coaches kind of alluding to what you're saying.
Yeah. Before we went on here, I called my good friend, former New York Islander Steve Webb, and I said, I'm going to be talking to Ken Daneyko. What was it like playing against him? He goes, he was like Velcro. Whenever you're near him, he was just on you. So that's what Webby said. It was like playing against you. So I think that's a pretty good compliment.
I know Steve over the years, crossing paths, and you have such respect for guys that battled like him and players you competed against. We hated each other when we played. Make no mistake about that. That was part of it. For me, you had to have hatred. I didn't like to engage too much with my competition along the way, whether it was in restaurants or bars. I'd walk out if players were there. I know the mentality may be a little different now. And then when you talk about it, when it's all done 5-6 years after your career, and you go, man, that was great, wasn't it? That was a great series. The nastiness, the battles we had. And you find out you're a lot alike. A lot of the guys you played against, competed against, you talked about the Berubes and a guy like Rick Tocchet, who's a good friend of mine. We couldn't stand each other. We fought, but when it's all said and done, we become friends because we realize we're a lot alike, and we just wanted to win, and no different with Webby or whoever it may be. So I appreciate him saying that, but that was my job. I had to try to stop you any way I could, whether that meant getting in Mary Lemieux's face to try to stop how great he was. And it's funny, the star players like Lemieux or Gretzky, when Lemieux came down to me, and I saw him a lot, because he was in our division for so long. As a defenseman, you're going, like that. The second I was going, oh no, I know he's got me, because he's put it between your stick, your skates, your feet, and instead of, if I didn't have that mindset of, look at his chest, I've got him, and it was very difficult. Or dropping the mitts with some of the tough guys, whatever it took to help your team get emotion, get a spark, and win. To me, that's what it was all about, is winning. And I never want players to lose sight of that, because, I don't mean to digress, Dan, but I see I get stats are great. I don't get me wrong. You have to score goals. You have to make plays. But sometimes I see the fans of each team focus too much on he's going to break the all-time record for most points with his team or the most assists in the history of the franchise. And all these accomplishments are wonderful. But if your stars and leaders don't have the mindset, the most important thing is the W. The most important thing is winning. Am I going to sacrifice come playoff time? How many teams do you see in the National Hockey League? Think about it. If you go over the last 20, 25 years that have won the Cup, don't get me wrong, you need great players. You're not going to win without them. But where teams, we always talk about depth and balance, and it doesn't matter who scores, and it doesn't matter, a lot of teams that have won it, including the Florida Panthers, weren't the highest scoring teams in the league or didn't have the guys with the gaudier stats. It was that they had depth in top to bottom, like the teams I played on. 95, Randy McKay, fourth line, crash line, had 8 goals in the playoffs. 8 goals. He was a fourth liner and fought everybody and anybody and hit everybody with the way the game was played when you needed it. But him and Bobby Holik and Peluso were on the fourth line. Holik and McKay had, double-digit points. I mean, that hasn't changed in the game. And ask the Florida Panthers last year. You need that depth. And yes, I love highlight reel plays. I've gone with the times. The skill level is off the charts. But I sometimes, in particular fans or media, we're so focused on these stats. Now, the only stat that should matter to top players, ask Alexander Ovechkin. He's going to break the all-time goals record. He's a legend, incredible. Do you think he'd trade any of those goals for what he accomplished finally in 2000? They won in 18, yeah. I watched closely. Alexander Ovechkin started to play the game different in those playoffs, and it resonated on the bench. He was 3 feet inside the blue line. He was going down to block shots. It's not that he didn't play his ass off every night through all his other playoffs, double-digit years, but it was learning as a leader, as the best player on the team. Okay, what else can I do to get us over the hump? And that was something very noticeable to me, what Ovechkin did during those playoffs. I'm going, watch him here. Watch him here. He wouldn't do this before. And not that it was just he didn't know any better, I believe, at the time. You know what I mean? And then he learned. You saw him just playing away from the puck, and he'd run over everybody, and he's a bull, and he'd score his goals when you certainly need your top players to score goals. But that's what I appreciate, because that's what it's going to take for any team to win a cup. And the Florida Panthers were a prime example last year. The Vegas Golden Knights the year before, they were impenetrable. They were, it was all about team and whatever it took to win 3-2, 4-2, 2-1, whatever you needed on a particular night. Their top guys like Jack Eichel, who bought in quickly. That's the way you win championships. And I just want to make sure players that is their mindset, because you're not winning with 2 players that have 150 points, but if that's the only major concern.
Yeah, that's the Oilers have figured that out. You mentioned some great.
And McDavid's learning that too.
Yes,
and he's figuring out as close as they got last year, and they got damn close and almost had an amazing comeback.
They sure did. We've mentioned some great players along the way here, including current stars. Gretzky, obviously the GOAT, but there's a guy who you mentioned that for some reason I don't think gets enough love, Mario Lemieux, because his name should be shouted from the rooftops. And whenever I talk to someone who played with him, I like to get their take, what it was like playing on the ice, because some guys say he was able to slow the game down. It was like he was in slow motion. Other people describe the exact opposite. Your description of on the ice with Mario Lemieux.
Well, I think I'd already mentioned how intimidating it was for a defenseman when we picked up that puck, because he was 6'4" or whatever he was, the reach, the incredible hands. Not to mention, I got one of his sticks after a playoff round. We played them, lost in 7, their first cup year. I think it was in 91. Well, and I never asked for sticks. I wasn't a collector. And I in the handshake line, I asked him for his stick, and he gave it to me, and he signed it. I could bench press. I could use it as a bench press and a workout tool. I'd like to see young players handle the puck the way Mario Lemieux did with this Coho stick, black stick, that seemed like it was about 5.5 pounds. So that's one thing. He was just the most feared guy for me anyway, one-on-one by a mile. I mean, you just knew if he had time and space and was gathering speed, because sometimes it looked like he lumbered. He was fast, he was big, he was powerful with the magical hands. I mean, almost impossible to stop. And when he took over a game, there was nobody better. So You're absolutely right. I played him hundreds of times because that was one of our rivals. That was a team we played a lot in the playoffs. Mario Lemieux is, well, if he ain't top two, if he ain't number one, or along the lines of the great one, then he's right there, right? I mean, he's as good as it gets. He would be dominant in today's game. He'd be dominant like he was with us. Nothing but respect, class, and a winner, and a leader. All those cups he won. Yeah, he knew it. He knew what it took. Yeah, he's got gaudy numbers, but believe me, Mario Lemieux did all the little things you need to do to lead your team to go 4 grueling rounds and win championships. One of the great, great players of all time. Great people. I know him off the ice. Just a wonderful guy. Can't say enough superlatives on and off the ice about Mario Lemieux.
I asked Webby the same question, and he said, Dan, if I was ever on the ice with Mario, which happened twice, it meant I should not be on the ice right now. He goes, I missed a shift. Something has gone wrong if I'm out there at the same time.
Well, do you know, Dan, and they've showed it many times, one night against us, he scored 5 goals, 5 different ways. Different ways.
You were in that game. Oh, yeah.
In that game. I tell everybody I think I was even that night, so not a bad night. Anybody that'll listen. But the score was 8-6, by the way. I think Kirk Muller was in that game, and he had 5 points for us, not to mention, but Mario Lemieux outdid him a little bit in 5 different ways. PP, shorthanded, empty net, even strength, whatever. It was 5 different ways. I don't think any player's ever done that.
I love it. That's amazing. We'll leave on that note. Ken, enjoy your time, your break, before you get back to calling Devils games and doing work on the NHL Network. We appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dan, and enjoyed being on with you. Enjoy the Four Nations tournament. Should be a lot of fun.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.